Lenard Zohn, founder of Autism Eats, thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
Of course, anytime. All right, so let's get started. My first question for you is, what inspired you to start Autism Eats? And can you tell me a little bit about the mission and how has your experience sort of shaped into founding such an amazing organization?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I mean, the starting of Autism Eats really came from a need. As the father to my son, Aiden, who's now 20 years old with autism, we were always a family that liked to be very social, would go out into the community for dinner, for snacks, to be with our family and other families and friends. And as much as we enjoyed doing that, to put it mildly, Aiden felt the exact opposite. So Aiden exhibited lots of characteristics of an individual with autism that's being overwhelmed by his environment. So the sights, the sounds could overstimulate Aiden. He would flop on the floor. He would run for the door, play his phone too loudly, jump on the seats. And it could be stressful. We could be disrupting other diners or people looking over in our direction. There was never anything on the menu that he could eat. So we often left those restaurants with our food in styrofoam to eat back at the kitchen table, or sometimes not at all. But the bottom line is we would leave feeling pretty dejected and feeling pretty absent from doing the typical and the normal things that we always expected to be able to do as a family.
Yeah. So how does Autism Eats transform these restaurants into sensory-friendly places? And what impact have you seen your organization have on the community?
Sure. So for us, after deciding that the stress is really outweighs any enjoyment we'll have at the restaurant, and we stopped going out, and we started feeling more and more isolated from the community. And it dawned on my wife and I one day that we're not the only autism family out there that misses doing this and going out. And we know exactly what doesn't work for a typical autism outing for a family. So what if we just did the opposite? So one side of the paper we wrote down, these are the issues, the challenges. On the other side of the paper we wrote down the opposite of it. And we said this is going to be our Autism Eats model. And we're going to come up with something that ensures everybody attending, from the individuals with autism to their families, their friends, their social circle, when they come to one of our events, everybody's going to enjoy themselves, everybody's going to have a good time, and everybody's going to feel welcomed and warm and safe, and they're not going to have to explain any behaviors, make any excuses. They're having a night out. They're having a typical night out in a restaurant, and they're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think for a neurotypical family, going out to eat is a very normal activity. But for a family with, neurodiverse children, it's not. It's a privilege, right?
It is a privilege.
So the fact that you can kind of create this sensory-friendly place for them is very special for these families to enjoy a night out.
It is indeed.
Right?
Yes.
And so as Autism Eats continues to grow, what do you see as the next step for making these public spaces more inclusive for families with children with autism?
Sure. So when we select a restaurant, it's very important for us for the restaurant to have the right physical layout to it. So we typically will have an entire restaurant to ourselves, or at least a section, function rooms or a whole side of the restaurant. And that's our non-judgmental space. And in that non-judgmental space, we set up tables that will accommodate families of 2, families of 4. But I also love when we have our big community tables. So we'll set up tables of anywhere from 8 to, I think last month, we had about 30 at one big long table, which is a very organic way for individuals and their families just to sit down next to some new people that they've never met before, and they're going to make some friends there. And they're going to enjoy the event together, talking, socializing. We see play dates occur. We see networking. I've seen guys making golf plans, because everybody has this big thing in common, and everybody understands a lot of what the other is going through. So they could choose to talk about it or not talk about it. But we like to say that the relationships continue, after the plates have been cleared. And then at the events, we have the ability to adjust the lights, adjust the sound of the music for those that have sensory sensitivity. So we want to make the sensory environment calming. We also set up a buffet of food. So we eliminate all the waiting. There's no waiting for a server, taking an order, waiting for food to be delivered, waiting for a check, and so on. When you arrive, the food's ready to go. So if you want to come late and leave early, or come early and leave late, however you want to do it, there's no rush. We've taken the stress off of that. And when you arrive, you're welcomed. You're given a name tag to foster people getting to know one another, and you're guided to a table that makes you the most comfortable and the most comfortable spot in the restaurant for you to be in.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And in a world where these children are always going into places that are tailored for the total opposite of their needs, that you can kind of create a space completely tailored for their needs, is something that's really, really special.
Thank you.
So I've personally been to one of your Autism Eats events, and it is absolutely beautiful just to see the community get together and see these children make friends and connections with other people. Can you tell me about a specific moment maybe that you've seen firsthand, or an interaction that kind of motivates you to keep doing this?
Sure. I mean, there's been many of them. I'll tell you one that comes to mind, and this one was pretty special. There was a young boy that came up to me about halfway through the night, and he was neurotypical, but he had a sibling with autism. And his brother, was running around the restaurant, enjoying himself, yelling, playing. He met some other friends. And his brother, the one that I was talking to, also met some siblings as well, siblings of kids on the spectrum. So he comes up to me and he said, "This is the greatest night of my life." Oh, wow. I said, "I'm so happy to hear that. Why is this the greatest night of your life?" He goes, "Well, my brother made a friend, and he's running around this restaurant, and nobody's telling him to stop or to be quiet or to behave or to sit down." I said, "Well, that's great." And he said, "But more than that." I said, "More than that? What more could there be?" He said, "My parents." He goes, "My parents, when we go out to dinner, when we try to go out to dinner as a family," he goes, "I never see them smile. I never see them smile. But tonight, I saw my dad and my mom smiling. I saw them laughing. And I even saw my dad give my mom a kiss on the cheek."
Wow.
And I said, "That's, you made my night. Thank you so much." How insightful for this young, I don't know, maybe 10, 12-year-old boy to have all of these thoughts and be processing them, and then being able to share them with me like that was very, very special and meaningful.
Right. So this experience is not just for children on the spectrum or people on the spectrum, but it's for the parents and the siblings or grandparents or whoever comes to these events.
It is.
Because they're also affected.
They're also affected.
Yeah.
Autism impacts the family, it impacts the social circle.
Yeah.
So when we have events, we want everybody to come. Anybody that you would typically socialize with, we want you to come out. And we want you to have fun and meet your peers, enjoy, and that's what it's about. And it's all ages, and it's all behaviors are always welcome at our events.
Oh, nice. Yeah, isn't that your slogan, all behaviors welcome?
It is.
And it's a night of a judgment-free zone.
Judgment-free,
right?
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for families or community members that want to get involved and support your organization, how can they do that?
I would love more support and more involvement from the community, so we're welcoming that. Autism Eats has had about 200 events across the country at this point. We're an entirely volunteer-led organization, so we're always looking for folks that want to organize Autism Eats events in their own community, and I'll show you how to do that and do it with you step by step. We're looking for donations to allow all families to join us regardless of their financial situation. We don't want to say no to anybody. And lastly, corporate donorships or personal donorships of funds so that we can use to build the infrastructure, sustain what we're doing, and also start growing so that we can increase the frequency of the events that we're having and increase the number of communities that are posting Autism Eats events.
Awesome. And what's a good website that our audience members can go?
Yeah, folks can check out autismeats.org.
Okay.
And they can donate there. They can send messages to me. as well as get updates on scheduled events that are coming.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lenard, so much for coming to the studio and sharing Autism Eats with us. It was great interviewing you, and you know I have a personal connection to this story, so I personally was really excited for you to come in, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for including me.
Of course.